What up? It's Donut, and you tuning into all your Illuminati news. We got an amazing lesson for you today. Oh my goodness. A lot of connections are going to be broken down tonight on becoming wicked smart. We here at the Donut Factory are going to get wicked smart. How the Illuminati indoctrinated the public schooling system to make us wicked dumb. The entire governmental public schooling system was fabricated to crush your imagination and turn you into a dummy. Remember what we told you. Write it down and be awarded with your PhD, which was a creation of the Illuminati, the PhDs. The educational hierarchy of a good A+ student, aka servant, is based off a do not question authority. Remember what we told you and write it down. Creating a generation of smiling depressives that are servants for the serpent elite. A true idiocracy has been born systematically. A recent study shows Americans are growing more and more dumber. The war for control over the mind was accomplished not through weapons, but through the influence in pop culture, public schooling, and social pressures. What if I told you this was all orchestrated by design via secret societies and practitioners of the occult? Systematically operating the public school system to dumb you down, remove your individualism, and make you a more manageable citizen. A donkey-brained, zombie, mindless consumer society. Schools are designed the same way prisons are, to keep the eye on the students. The public school system is based on behaviorism, animal training, straight out of Leipzig University by William Wundt, whose family was part of the Illuminati. And his methods were adopted by American educators through Skull and Bones, 322 Secret Order, under the viewpoint of the world that man has no self-determination and is only a cog in the machine. The bell rings for 12 years, ordering you when to do what to do. That bell has been replaced by the dings of your cell phone and social media. But don't worry, we gonna get you wicked smart. Come with me on this journey as we uncover the taboo topics of Illuminati, Skull and Bones, the Anglo-American establishment and mind control, a topic thought by the masses just conspiracy for stereotypical paranoids. In this presentation, you will see it's just history, and we got the evidence to prove it. His story. Why do you think in history class you were never taught about the Freemasons? You were never taught about fascinating topics which made you interested in learning. That's what we gonna do here today. We gonna get wicked smart with interesting topics. This is wild information. This will show you the evidence that the Illuminati and Skull and Bones control the public schooling system. Although the founding fathers, all of them, were part of secret societies, that information was left out in school. The reason you were not taught about the Freemasons in history class was on purpose. It's mind control by omission. These powerful secret societies shape our future, whether that's the Black Hand that kicked off World War I, the Theosophical Society that plays a huge role in politics, the Thule Society, which was responsible for the rise of the Third Realm, Bohemian Grove, and much more. Intentionally left out of the curriculum. The same occult power brokers that set up public schooling is also who plays in both sides of every political movement, every religious institution, and every world war. Divide and conquer is the motto. This is also applicable to the schooling system, how they divide and conquer the students by grades. The fourth graders, don't be hanging out with the fifth graders. Divide them that way and divide the students. This is the smart section. This is the stupid section. And they also put us through humiliation rituals, which goes into some racist theories that it's all based off of. So kids won't reproduce. It's all eugenics. So the humiliation rituals is all based off of Darwin's theory of natural selection, also known as the favored races. John Adams was a Freemason, right? And he was also part of the Illuminati. He eventually went against the Freemasons, becoming an anti-Masonic president. And this is why we don't hear about him much in history class. They don't want you to know this. Even though he was anti-Masonic president, founding father, he still played a role in the Illuminati. The focus was always on George W., not George W., both of them, part of 322 Skull and Bones, but George W., George Washington. The focus is always on him. You never hear about John Adams. This is on purpose. It's the omission. It's intentional. By not allowing children to harness their skills of determination, removing critical thinking and moral values, and totally eliminate the imagination, this is how the schooling system made society wicked dumb. And it was all set up by secret orders directly connected to Skull and Bones and the Illuminati. A method by the elites is nudging us to look in one direction, like a magician. Even the CIA hires magicians like Mulholland for deception, to teach the agents how to deceive. Look this way, don't look this way. This is omission. They can control certain elements of truth and control the narrative by telling you a bunch of truths, but leaving out a lot of the facts. For example, focusing on the Civil War and not the War of 1812, when Britain regained control back of America. Through 1864 and 1910, the Crown won not by weapons and warfare, but through opinion, through public opinion, through propaganda, through the magazines, through pop culture. This is why on this channel, I focus a lot on the celebrities, because they are Illuminati celebrities. Leonardo DiCaprio at the UN, all of this. BTS at the UN, wicked smart people like John Gatto, which we'll get into it, on how they deliberately dumb down America. We're going to also get into Anthony Sutton's work, who broke all this down. These are professors, smart, wicked smart guys who already broke this all down for us. How Skull and Bones, Illuminati, Anglo-American establishment controls the schooling system, controls both sides of the party, and destroys imagination. Also taking God out of school. They're saying that because of church and state, the separation of church and state. That's what they tell us, but that's not really the reason why. The real reason why is to take out the principles and values that direct and guide the children's life. So removing values was the reason they took God out, was not because of church and state. It was all because of the values. Also, women's rights. We're told that women's rights is for freedom for women. Absolutely not. This was all designed to hand over the children to the state. Also to tax all the incomes in the home, but most importantly, removing the children from being raised and watched over by their parental guardians, handing the authority of the child over to the governmental institution to be watched and groomed. To achieve this goal, they needed to have both of the parents out at work and out of the home. And this is not a diss to education, as we want to get wicked smart up in here. This is not dissing education. We get wicked smart up in here, and we are talking about the schooling system crippling kids' imagination and making them cogs in the machine. All the founding fathers, they didn't get a degree. They didn't graduate out of school, but somebody taught them. They were wicked smart. Throughout most of American history, kids generally did not go to school, yet rose to be admired by schools like Thomas Edison. In most cultures, at the age of 13, like when I got my bar mitzvah, I became a man. Most cultures at 13, you weren't looked at as a child anymore. Through pop culture and the schooling system, to artificially prolong childhood, to keep people in a dumbed down adolescence for a longer period of time. The arrested development. This is why we got magazines like 17 magazine. So once you're 17, to prolong the arrested development. This is why Homer Simpson, Peter Griffin, all the fathers in television shows are wicked stupid. This is on purpose. It's all deliberately dumbing the generations down. I mean, going to preschool through grades K through 12 to college isn't enough. They need to add on to that with pop culture. And this is why you see adults acting like children while they watch football. So don't confuse education with the schooling system. The schooling system resembles a prison, physically and mentally. They didn't want the kids to be home alone. The latchkey laws were on surface to protect the kids, but the real reason was to keep schools open longer. So was the movie Home Alone just more social programming via Hollywood to make you scared to be alone? They do this with nature. In horror movies, you always see the wind blowing and scary music. Whenever you see the trees moving, they play scary music to make you scared of nature, of being alone. And most of the world has autophobia. During the lockdowns, people freaked out because they didn't know how to be alone in their cage at home. It's called autophobia. And it also makes me just think about the children's urban legends. Stepping on a crack to break the back. Bloody Mary, the boogeyman. Boogeyman comes from bugaboo, like they got a song by Beyonce, part of the Rockefellers. We'll see how the Rockefellers are all connected to this as well. Bugaboo is actually a song about devils and demons. It's pretty interesting. That'll be a video on its own, like the children's urban legend, these mythologies that were built in the streets. And even the Muffin Man, we hear about that story. That was actually a real serial killer. These mythologies played a huge role with kids in the streets. And now the boogeyman that they tell us through The Economist magazine, Putin right now, it's for now, but eventually it'll be Xi Jinping. It'll be China, Russia. Those are the boogeymen. But this is the crazy part. The boogeyman, Russia and China, are also controlled by the same people that control America. It's very deep. These institutions control every fabric of society. It's insane. The objective was to keep the schools open longer, indoctrinating the youth from preschool all the way to grade 12. The degrees in school are rituals based off occult symbolism. The most important degrees in Freemasonry are the first 13 steps, the first 13 degrees. You could say K through 12 are the first 13 degrees, the graduation cap being the Masonic tracing board, the black robes. You see the judge with the robes. This goes into Saturn. Even Skull and Bones, who's controlling the schooling system, if you're part of it, you get awarded a clock, a grandfather clock, that must be 5 minutes ahead at all times because they want to be ahead of everybody else. It's all symbolism. The Illuminati blueprints are rolled out every centennial, every 111 years. So whatever's happening now was planned out 100 years ago. And you can see this in their writings. The masses' IQs are dropping because of their short attention spans through the cell phones, the quick dopamine hits, compulsion, and filling their heads with garbage. But this goes way back, way before cell phones. The new Pavlov animal testing on humans, it goes back to the Prussian schooling system to destroy imagination and make them good servants, manageable for society. Tip to becoming wicked smart is lengthen your attention span through meditation, through listening to classical music. Patience is a virtue, learning patience, not being so compulsive. To accomplish this control over the centennial, they needed to have the parents give up their children, like in the ancient days, giving up the children to Moloch, handing their children over to the Molochian school system for decades. To accomplish this agenda, the children could not be home alone or running the streets with other kids. Individualism is the enemy of what the establishment wants. So another wicked smart tip is when you're indulged in a group to always keep your individualism. Wicked smart tip. Now we're going to get into how this all connects to the Illuminati and Skull and Bones. With this graph right here, this graph will explain it all. The guy on the top is Wilhelm Wundt. Now I'm going to say some of these names wrong because I'm getting wicked smart with everybody here. Wilhelm Wundt, his grandfather was Illuminati. He was part of the Illuminati. His name was Raphael. And you can see that it goes down to G. Stanley Hall, and G. Stanley Hall brought this to America. and G. Stanley Hall was straight connected with 322 Skull and Bones, the Hopkins Society, where you get Event 201 and all this. William Maximilian Wundt, he was known as the father of psychology. His granddaddy was Professor Karl Casimir Wundt, also known as Raphael, a member of the Illuminati. So you got the main guy who brought public schooling system, his grandfather was Illuminati member. And then he handed it down to Stanley Hall, to Mr. Hall, who was connected with 322 Skull and Bones. This all connects to the University of Leipzig, where Wundt founded the first laboratory for psychological research and experimental psychology. William Wundt's teachings at Leipzig University in Germany revolutionized teaching and schooling in America. Their philosophies carry on to the top students who are awarded with the PhDs so they could secure their viewpoints throughout the centennial. So even if the Illuminati doesn't exist today, their viewpoints are carried on through the people who get these PhDs and are awarded at these top level positions. The Wundtian view of the world was brought back from Germany at Leipzig University to the United States by G. Stanley Hall and other Americans through what they called the Americanization of Wundt. In this book, Basics in Education, Wundt made two major contributions to the transformation of education in the West. The first was theoretical, the second changing psychology from philosophy to physiology, stimulus and response, which turned into behaviorism, which is what the entire school system is today. Animal training. Animal training, you guys are all animals. Like the Pavlov dog experiment where they ring the bell. Now, Pavlov went to the same Leipzig University just like a few years after Wundt was there. Wundt asserted that man is devoid of spirit and self-determinism. He set out to prove that man is the summation of his experience of the stimuli which intrude upon his consciousness and his unconsciousness. Wundt's thesis laid the philosophical basis for the principles of conditioning later developed by Pavlov. These are the Bell experiments, who studied physiology in Leipzig in 1884, 5 years after Wundt had inaugurated his laboratory there. This is where all this MK Ultra mind control experiments and the PhDs and your public schoolings come from. Below Wundt on this graph, you will see his teachings were passed down to G. Stanley Hall. Wundt was a major influence on Hall. Hall went to Germany, to Leipzig University. He became the first of dozens of Americans to receive a PhD in psychology, a new field under Wundt. G. Stanley Hall had a career at Johns Hopkins, the Event 201 guys. Hopkins president is a Skull and Bones member. Coincidentally, even Yale, who will be celebrating its 322 year this year in 2023, were the first to give out the PhDs in the USA. G. Stanley Hall's autobiography, he even bragged about how he worked for the Order 322. While Hall was at Antioch College in Yellow Springs, where Dave Chappelle's dad taught, he was under the influence of certain groups, and one was the Skull and Bones co-founder, Alfonso Taft. That is the connection to the Illuminati and Skull and Bones, setting up and controlling the public school system. I mean, this rabbit hole goes even deeper as these PhDs pass their information on to the next generations who would shape and result the American IQs dropping and dumbing down of America today. It's not one person responsible for dumbing down all these people. There's many people at play. You got people like John Dewey. You got people like Johann Heinrich Pestalozzi, and many others. But this Johann Pestalozzi is interesting. This book here, How Gertrude Teaches Her Children, had a profound impact on the opinion and practice of education. His father died at 33, and here's a picture of him doing the hidden hand, just like this picture of Philo, the second in command of the Illuminati, doing the hidden hand. So what these guys were doing was creating a system for children for social control and manipulation And in this pamphlet, How the Order Controls Education 322 by Anthony C. Studden and many of his other works, he exposed all this, and he got all of his information from Charlotte Ezerbit. Her father and grandfather were part of 322 Order, and she gave him all the documents. Anthony Sutton, coincidentally, was fired right when the Trilateral Commission was founded by the same guy who fired Steve Jobs. John Taylor Gatto is another excellent man to research as he dived deeply into this topic. According to Gatto, the purpose of public education can be boiled down to these 6 functions that are described by Alexander Inglis in his 1918 book, Principles of Secondary Education. 1. The adjustive or adaptive functions. Schools are designed to establish fixed habits of response to authority, which is creating a habit of reaction to authority. This includes getting rid of interesting materials that the kids want to learn. Wicked smart factoid is to not assume that the authority is speaking the truth. That's another wicked smart factoid. Don't assume just because someone's in an authoritative position that they are speaking the truth. Authority, the authors of the authority. Number 2, the integrating function. The purpose of this function is to make kids as alike as possible, which is conforming. People who conform are predictable, making their future at the labor force easy to manage. 3, the diagnostics and directive function. Schools determine each student's proper social role, which is the student's future role in society. 4, the differentiating function. Students are trained no more than to meet the standards of determined social roles. 5, the selective function. Unadopted students are treated like inferiors in order to prevent their reproduction. This is Darwin's theory of natural selection, what is called the favored races. That's what the humiliation rituals in the dunce hat are all about. Go in the corner if you're bad, so you won't be liked by the class and you won't reproduce in society. Number 6, the propedeutic function. Small fraction of selected students is created in order to continue the schooling system. And this is where they select the kids to continue this. And we'll get into how they do select these kids. I mean, you got these hall monitors, right? That's a certain type of mentality there. But this guy who wrote this, Alexander Inglis in 1918, Alexander was not alone in championing these ideas. Men like George Peabody, who funded mandatory schooling throughout the South, understood that the Prussian system was useful in creating a servile labor force and mindless consumers. Part of this herd to indoctrinate was Andrew Carnegie and John Rockefeller. Bringing this Prussian schooling system into America was designed intentionally to destroy the American imagination. Get rid of the imagination by the memorizing and the rules to get rid of imagination. According to Johann Fichte, a philosopher, he addresses the German nation, saying that the imagination demon was loose among soldiers so they wouldn't follow orders from the top. Spinoza, in Spinoza Tractus Theologico-Politicus, said that ordinary population was so psychologically diseased there was no way to heal it, just like Fichte said years later. Fichte said universal forced schooling destroys imagination by filling the children's head with garbage and compulsion. This is why we got TikTok today and social media and the attention spans and the IQs dropping. Satirical writer H.L. Mencken wrote in 1924 for the American Mercury, which had a lot of truths within it on the Prussian schooling system brought to America, to fill the young of the species with knowledge and awaken their intelligence. Nothing could be further from the truth. The aim is simply to reduce as many individuals as possible to the same safe level, to breed and train a standardized citizenry, to put down dissent and originality. That is its aim in the United States, and that is its aim everywhere else. This goes back to the military state of Prussia. Our education system is of Prussian origins, which was an educational system deliberately designed to produce mediocre intellects, deny students of leadership skills, to become docile citizens so the population could be manageable. Prussian army realized that their troops were not taking orders from the top down, and they needed to change that. This is what the whole New World Order is all about with its new AI technocracy. It's going to be one system controlling it all, eventually linking everyone up to the Neuralinks, nanotech devices. This whole transhumanism agenda is in play for the centennial. We getting wicked smart up in here. Yo, it's Donut. You tuned into Getting Wicked Smart. This is lesson 1. This is lesson 1 of Getting Wicked Smart. The Illuminati and Skull and Bones created our schooling system.